don't need a title to be a leader. How many people know that? How many people know that you don't need a title to be a leader? If you're taking care of children, yours or somebody else's, elderly parents, family members, or anyone for that matter, even if all you're taking care of is a pet, you're a leader. Think about it. You're making decisions for somebody else's life. If you're making decisions, if you are a determining factor, if you are helping someone else out, then you're a leader. Now, somebody out there is thinking, it's just me. I have no one, not even a pet. How does that make me a leader? Well, you still have to manage your own life. If you don't manage your own life, somebody else will. I assure you, somebody else will. Personal leadership is where you learn to manage your own life. Today, I'm going to share with you some things I've learned about personal leadership over the years. I put it all together, and I use an acronym called SURVIVOR to explain what I've learned about personal leadership. So before I get started telling you about personal leadership, there's a few things that I need you to understand, that I need everyone in here to know. Those two things. One, who's the most important person in the world? So I pose this question to you. Who do you think is the most important person in the world? This is not rhetorical. Somebody holler at me. Me. That is the correct answer. As far as everyone in here is concerned, you are the most important person in the world. When I talk to people and I tell them that they're the most important person in the world, I tell them about what I call the airplane theory. You know how when you get on the plane, it pulls away from the gate, you're making your way to the runway. The flight attendant comes out, and the flight attendant says, this is the safety briefing. In the event of an emergency, the oxygen mask will drop from above. Children, people traveling with small children, please put your mask on first before putting your child's mask on. Now what they're saying to you, in essence, is this. Do not burden the staff or someone around you if you pass out and didn't take care of your child. So you have to put your mask on first. Now if the child goes out, it's going to be okay. Because when you put that mask on them, when they get the whiff of that oxygen, they're going to come to. They're going to be all right. But what happens if you're trying to put your child's mask on and you pass out? What happens if you're unsuccessful in getting the child's mask on? Now that's two people that somebody else has to take care of. But think about it. This is an emergency. People are in a panic. They may not see you. What happens if you get the child's mask on and you pass out? Can that child put your mask on?
Probably not.
Probably not. So you can't give away what you don't have. Even your life, you can't give it away if you don't have it. So you got to put your mask on first to take care of the child. So who's the most important person in the world? Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you about skills. And I'm going to tell you how it benefited my life. And I hope it be a blessing in your life. But before I do, I ask everyone to indulge me. Please stand up. Please. Share your love and your energy with me. I'm going to ask you, and I want you to rock this ceiling. Who's the most important person in the world? Me! Y'all don't mean that. I'm not feeling it up here. I'm hearing a bunch of mannequins go, me! Come on, y'all. This is serious. If you walk away with nothing from my speech, you better walk away with this. Because this is your life. Who's the most important person in the world? Me! One more time, but say it with your heart in it. This is your life we're talking about. Everyone that you're going to meet from this point on, you're going to leave a part of you with. Not that you haven't done it before, but now you're consciously leaving a part of who you are within people. With everyone, you want to give them the best. If you don't know the best in you, how can you give the best away? Who is the most important person in the world? Me! All right, thank you. Please be seated. Now that you know the first thing, the second thing you need to understand is life is cyclical. What does that mean? We go through seasons, and I'm not talking about spring, summer, winter, and fall. I'm talking about seasons in your life. There are times when everything is going fine. But then there are times when it's not going fine. I'm going to illustrate this with a story. I'm going to tell you a story about Joe. Joe works an average job. His life is okay. He has friends he hangs out with. He has a girl. He has a pretty good life. He goes to work. He comes home. Just like most people, right? So one morning, Joe is in his car, and he's just riding along on his way to work. Everything's okay. Boom! Whoa! Joe hits a pothole. Joe gets out of his car, and he looks. His front tires, both of them, are blown. Joe gets on his cell phone. He calls his travel club. And they're nice enough to inform him, you've already used up your free towing for the month, so it's going to cost you $50 to get to the shop. Joe thinking, I don't have $50. I've got rent, and the money that I was going to party with this weekend is going to put 2 new tires on his car. So what is Joe to do? Joe going to do what Joe got to do. The car's got to be towed. So Joe gets to the shop. The mechanic comes out and says, not only have you blown 2 tires, you bent the rims. Your axle's bent also. So that's going to cost almost $4,000 to fix your car. What's going through Joe's mind? Holy, you know what comes next. Joe gets on the phone. He starts to call everybody, mom and dad, grandma and grandpa on both sides of the family. He calls his aunties, his uncles, his cousins. He calls girlfriends, even ex-girlfriends. Don't judge him, he's desperate. He's calling his best friend, his friend's friends. He's calling enemies. He's calling everybody he can think about. People who he only met one time, but he got their phone number. Can you loan me something, please? He's desperate. No one can help him. Times are hard. The next day, Joe goes to work. He had to bus in. His boss calls him in the office. Joe knew layoffs was coming. He just didn't know that he'd be at the front of the line. His boss tells him, Joe, yesterday you were no call, no show. You see, in all the hustle and bustle, the issues with the car, Joe called everybody except work. Don't feel sorry for Joe. He was already skating on thin ice. He just tipped himself over. Usually, when there's a problem in our life, if we look hard enough, we'll see. We played a part in it. So now, Joe has no job. Joe has no car. Joe's short on rent. Joe is going through. Everybody goes through. It's one of those seasons. Somebody in here is going through right now. Somebody's about to go through. Somebody just came out from going through. It's a season. We all do it. So what we've seen in Joe's life is everything is fine, and then a problem happens. Problems happen all the time. But sometimes problems start to mount up. It's what old folks used to say, when it rains, it pours. Because it starts to come so fast that you can't handle all the problems that you get. And then that one big problem comes. That problem that just pushes you over. And then you're going through. And when you're going through, that's when times are really hard. That's when you're challenged. That's when personal leadership is needed the most. I want to share with you guys a particular time when I was going through. I was going through bad. I was in a dark night of the soul. Some of you may know what a dark night of the soul is. It's when you're going through so bad, you're challenged to your very spirit. It's when you're tested to the core of who you are. This is what I was going through. You see, when I was going through this particular day in 2000, I had just received a letter in the mail. At that time, I was thinking, it had been about 2 years since my wife had left. We separated amply, and she took my young son with her. My girlfriend at that time had chose that week to break up with me. My mother's health was falling apart. I had spent most of my time playing nursemaid to her. My business, Financial Freedom Services, was falling apart because I didn't have the time or the energy to put into it. Because I was taking care of my mom, doing what I had to do. To top it off, my car had been repossessed, and I hadn't seen my cat in days. I opened up this letter, and though my house was in foreclosure, now it's real. This letter is telling me the exact day that my house will be auctioned at Baltimore City Courthouse, and the time that it will be auctioned off. You see, I was going through. I was seriously going through. I was in a dark night of the soul. What was I to do? Now they tell you, when you hit rock bottom, there's nowhere else to go but up. But that's a lie, folks. When you hit rock bottom, there's a basement. And the basement has a sub-basement. I was in the basement of my house, but I was only at rock bottom. I was looking at the basement. The basement was me being homeless, taking care of my mother. How do you survive on the streets with a woman who's got all kinds of health issues? What do you do when it's cold? What do you do when it's too hot? When I gotta go get food, who watches her? Who protects her from all those predators out there on the street? If I'm not there. You see, I was looking at the basement, but I was already at rock bottom. I don't think y'all understand what I was going through unless you've been there. You see, so in that moment, fear came all over me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't have anyone to turn to. All I had was me. And when I could no longer hold it together, when I was ready to fall apart, I thought about what old folks say when you're going through. You pray. Now at that time, I was not a prayer warrior, but I put my hands together and I prayed. I asked God to help me. And God, knowing I'm not a prayer warrior, God said to me, you know what God said to me, Frankie? God said, meditate. Now that's where my strength is, in meditation. So I sat down, I folded my legs, I got comfortable, I cleared my mind, I relaxed my body, and I meditated. And what came to me was 8 years. 8 years of military service as a combat armed soldier. I learned survival. Survival was an acronym you learn in the infantry that teaches you how to survive behind enemy lines. Well, I'm not behind enemy lines. Right now, I'm behind the enemy mind. And this is just as serious. Because when the enemy mind takes advantage, it will take you out. It will push you over the edge. It will make you think that you're nothing. In those moments, my mind was telling me, you ain't nothing. You lower than dirt. You ain't good enough to crawl under a snake's belly. You're a loser. And when those things start to go on inside of you, what are you supposed to do? After a period of time, you start to break. And so in my meditation, as I'm trying to get myself together, I remember survival. And S-U-R-V-I-V-A-L came back to me, but not the way they taught it to me when I was in the military. No, S became the situation. And I had to realize, I had to look completely in the situation I was in. What resources do I have? Where am I in this moment in my life? What's really happening in my life? I got to take the blinders off. I got to get real with me. This ain't no time to play games. I can't afford the luxury of a negative thought. So I had to be serious about what's going on. I had to see what resources I had. What resources I could pull together to try to get out of the situation I was in. Then I had to do what we called in the military an after-action review. I had to look back at where I was to figure out how I got from there to here. I had to see the mistakes that I made. I had to understand, where did I go wrong? What were the signs that I didn't see? So the next time they come up, I know what I'm doing. I know how to go around them. So I had to pay attention to my life. How many people pay attention to their life? That's good. Because most people just go about life. A lot like Joe went about life. You've got to pay attention to what's going on in life. And then the third part of that was, how do I get from where I am to where I want to be? Now that's a good time to use a life coach. I just happen to know a good life coach. Back then, I didn't even know what a life coach was. But I knew that I had to figure out how I'm going to get from where I am to where I want to be. So I had to create a plan that would get me to where I wanted to be. You understand it takes time. I didn't have time. I had a letter that said within about 3 weeks, I had to vacate the property. It was going to be sold. But it takes time. It takes time to put together a plan. It takes time to figure out where you are. It takes time to understand how you got there. Undue haste makes waste. But you still have to do something. You have to take action. You have to move expeditiously because you don't have time. So that means you have to figure out something. One, what is your long-term goal? Where do I want to get to? Write that out. Work out the details later. You don't have time right now. Two, what is your mid-range goal? Your mid-range goal is when you've gotten past this current situation. What am I going to do at that time? And three, your short term. What am I going to do immediately? What am I going to do right now that's going to help me get out of this situation that I'm in? What can I do today that will start to move me in the direction I need to go in? That's what you got to work on first. Because it does take time to put together a good plan. And you need to have an A, B, and C plan. I had an A, a B, a C, and a D plan because I was desperate. See, I didn't want to be homeless. And I didn't want to be homeless taking care of my mother. Remember who you are. In one of my darkest moments, I'd already taken care of a homeless situation, sort of. My sister allowed me to live with her, me and my mother. I was staying there, but essentially I was still homeless. And on this particular day, I'm hanging out with my brother, who's like my best friend. And we were having men talk, that bonding thing that men do when they're alone with each other. And so I'm opening up to my brother and I'm telling him, I failed, man. I let my whole family down. I let everybody down, even you. Because my brother, from time to time, stayed at my house. Now my brother, being the cool cat that he is, he didn't even miss a beat. He didn't even look at me. With his shades on, he's still driving down the street. And in that deep voice of his, he said, I don't know what you're talking about. You're still the same man I've always known. In that moment, I sucked that teardrop right back up in my eye. Because men don't cry. I wasn't going to show him that. Because what he said may have came from his mouth, but I tell you, that was only God talking through him. Because I was teetering, folks. I was on the edge. I was about to fall. I didn't know what was coming next. I was lost because I didn't remember who I was. In that moment, he don't know it, but he saved my life. You got to remember who you are. We've heard all the sayings, God don't make no junk. At my Father's house there are many mansions. That has become real to you. You have to remember that you were made by a perfect entity. And even in your imperfections, you are perfect. Every one of us is perfect. Yes. And never let anybody take that from you. Perfection is your heavenly right. You make mistakes because you were meant to. Nothing happens that wasn't supposed to happen. If you didn't make mistakes, how could you grow? How could you get better? How can you be supreme? How can you be the gods or goddesses that you are meant to be if you don't make mistakes? You got to learn. So remember who you are. You are perfect in your imperfections. You are here for a reason. You are who you are for a reason. Vanquish fear. That fear doesn't go away just because you got a plan. Even when you work in your plan, that fear doesn't go away. Fear is false evidence appearing real. It is a tool of the ego's sole purpose, EGO, edging God out. Fear is an independent assassin. It doesn't care who it works for. It'll work for you as well as it'll work against you. What you got to do, what I had to do, was figure out how to get fear on my side. Because every day I woke up, I was scared. Every night I went to bed, I was scared. I was used to having my own, doing my own thing. I was used to holding it up. I was like Atlas. I carried the world on my back. At least that's how I felt. Now, I can barely hold my head up. But fear was beating me down. It almost paralyzed me. It almost made me afraid to try again. But I had to turn fear around. You see, fear sitting right there in that moment is telling me all the things that ego want me to hear. That I'm no good, that I'm a loser, that I'm a failure, that I let everybody down, that I should just pack it in. But I learned to turn it around. And instead of being afraid, I decided I was too afraid to be homeless. And I was willing to do whatever it takes to not be homeless. You see, fear became my motivator. Instead of using it against me, I made a deal with the assassin. And I used it to better me. So fear propelled me forward. Every day, my fear of having nowhere to go made me figure out what I'm going to do this day. It made me move in the direction that I needed to move in. Improvising ideas. How many people know that your success is directly related to the number of ideas that you come up with? Do you know that? If you want to be successful, you got to have ideas. Any plan begins with an idea. Well, I had lots of ideas once I pushed fear aside. Then the ideas started coming in, and I got creative. And I was on the road at that time. But then, how does it go? The best laid plans are men and mice. You got to improvise. Because no matter what your plan is, no matter how good your plan is, it's going to fall apart. So you got to have a plan B, a plan C. And in my case, I had a plan D. Because I was prepared when things went wrong to move in another direction. You don't give up the overall goal. You just find another way of getting there. You got to have ideas, and you got to improvise on those ideas. And you break those steps down into something that you can do every single day. Value life and value love. When I was going through and I hit that rock point, that hard point, when my brother said those words to me, just before that, in my mind, I was done. I'd thrown in the towel. I was ready to give it up. To tell you the truth, my mind was playing tricks on me. It had me to the point where I was ready to take me out. Don't judge me, unless you've been there. I was ready to end it all. Because I couldn't see beyond the moment. But then, my mind would change. And it would say, don't hurt you, do it to somebody else. Now, I ain't nobody's thug. But in that moment, survival became number one. And it became me or them. And I was teetering back and forth. I tell you, I was on that fence. I was about to fall. And those words that my brother said to me pulled me back. It helped me remember who I am. And none of those things meant anything to me no more. I'm not doing it to me, and I'm not doing it to you. But when you're in that moment, you'll do whatever you got to do. You get to know it to an act. And your animal instincts come out. So I valued my life more after my brother showed me that he valued my life. That was love. Do all things in love. You don't know who you're talking to or what they're going through. You don't know what you might say that might change somebody else's life. You don't know when the words you say will either push someone over or pull them back. Do all things in love. Value love. Value love and life for yourself. Value it for other people. Because we're all connected. And every little thing that we do affects somebody else. Every word that we say has an effect on someone else. This was the biggest one. If I offend anyone, I'm sorry. But I couldn't have made it through without it.
Amen.
So I don't know what you're dealing with, but I know what I went through. And if it hadn't been for this, except God, I wouldn't be here today. You wouldn't be listening to me. I'd have been an afterthought for someone. That little girl right there, she wouldn't be sitting in that chair right now. Because her turn would have never came. When I was going through, I couldn't do it on my own. I needed a higher power. I needed those words to come from my brother. I needed people to look at me a certain way. I needed people to understand I'm still a man. I'm still human. I'm not an animal. Sometimes when you're going through and when you give up on yourself, you resort to acting like an animal. But you're still a person. Don't ever think that you can do it without a higher power. I'm not here to talk religion. So you find your own. But I know for me, that's what got me through. By myself, it wouldn't have happened. Listen. Some of the wisest things I've ever heard came from people we would call bums. You would be surprised the amount of wisdom you can find in the streets. We tend to judge a book by its cover. We look at someone, and if they look like they know what they're talking about, then we listen to them. If they don't look like they have a clue, we shut them down. You got to listen to people. Listen to somebody else's story. Find your value in their story. You don't know what they have to bring to your life unless you listen. Don't just hear them. Listen. And when you listen, forget about this. Don't listen with your ears. Listen with your heart. Because if I want to know where Tanya is coming from and we having a conversation, I can listen to everything she's saying. But if I don't put my heart in it and open up to what she's trying to tell me, I'm not going to get the underlying meaning behind what she's saying. When you listen, listen with your heart. Open up to people. It's an exchange when you're communicating. You give and I give. I give of me, you give of you. Learn. Learn your trade. Whatever it is you do, learn everything you can learn about it. Master it. Be good enough that you can teach it. Be good enough that you can do it when you sleep. When I went through basic training, we had to close our eyes and break down an M16 and put it back together. You had 18 seconds to do that. There's a reason for that. 18 seconds, blindfolded. Break it down, put it back together. You should know your craft just that well. That you can do it in the dark. That you can do it blindfolded. You can do it under pressure, no matter what that pressure is. Learn your trade. But don't stop there. Learn something about everything. Because you never know who you're going to interact with. You don't have to be a jack of all trades, but know a little bit about everything. Stay interested. Stay open at the top. Don't close your mind off, because then you stop growing. And what did we learn? That we are all perfect, even in our imperfections. Our imperfections are so we can grow. So if you shut down here, you stop growing. Amen. Love. That word right there. Wars have begun and ended because of that word right there. Marriages have begun and ended because of that word right there. Love is a powerful thing. When used in the right manner, love will put you on a high. You'll be running around like a crackhead, can't get enough, wanting more and more. But when used the wrong way, love will have you strung out way on the ground, wondering why the world is spinning so fast, heartbroken tears streaming down your face. Be responsible with love. Give love expecting nothing in return. Give love because it's the right thing to do. When you open your mouth and those words slip out, apologize. When you're about to take an action, Ask yourself, what would love do in this moment? Love is the greatest thing. It's the one thing that we all share. And though we may view it differently, love is all there is. And it's what brings us all together. It's what connects us. And I want to tell you that I love being here. And I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to come here before you today. That's been my time. Your destiny awaits. Be blessed.